best of 5 between JDXL and Astralis Town, but we like to celebrate our own milestones as well as we get onto the Rift.
Yeah, and it's been a couple of years, and I'm really excited that we do get to celebrate this anniversary with this best of 5 here between these two teams, because as was mentioned a little bit on the desk, these are two teams that haven't had the opportunity to face off against each other in one of these extended series, so I'm really excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and, you know, these are two Div 1 teams with a bit of a bone to pick against each other because these are teams which have both had to improve over this year. JDXL, obviously, they were at the very peak of the NLC for the first half of summer, but then they had to take a back step, had to rebuild, had to learn yet again, particularly with the likes of Mrozku coming in, really strong mechanical player, just needed to slot in a little bit more towards what a top-level macro team needs in the ERLs. And on the other side, of course, Astralis, no stranger to their own rookies as well. The desk talked about Carlson, and what a growth he's had. Both of these teams now have one last opportunity to really show how far that learning's gone.
Yeah, and then of course you talk about the rookies, but we need to shout out the veterans as well. Dan and Kryze, these players with so much experience. Then Senkux as well, who has been playing professional League of Legends since 2012. This guy has been getting on the Rift before Carlson even knew how to read.
You know, that's great. I love the phrasing you had on that because look, there is a sense of scale here, right? You know, was talking about, you know, Carlson, big 17, very young player, and then of course the likes of Senkux having that real tenure, that real veteran scene. As you can see already, melee versus melee in the mid lane, melee versus melee in top lane as well for one of our other rookies, and Carlson versus another one of our veteran players in Kryze. There are so many melees across this game. I am expecting a lot of very bloody skirmishes, and I look at all of the champions in this game, and I think actually most of these champions really thrive when things get into this really messy brawl with lots of low-range carries. So for me, very much looking forward to those skirmishes.
Yeah, you want to get down and dirty. I mean, even the AD carries, right? Lucian and Samira are not champions that are famed for their ability to interact at a very long distance away, so they're even going to have to be getting involved in the action with some of these melee bruisers.
Sure. So what that means is often leads stick in this game. Anything which comes across early, you expect that to be the case for most of the laning phase, which is why probably have to talk a little bit about those junglers and how they impact things as well, because if there is anyone who really knows how to play towards those kind of win conditions, it's Dan, the guy on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
For me, Dan was the standout player from NLC Summer. He was my Summer MVP, in fact, even though JDXL ended up falling off, because he's great at turning up to the lanes when they need him. He comes up into bot lane as they're crashing that wave in, just making sure that Taxa doesn't have a chance to really impact this game himself. Taxa is no slouch in his own right. Actually, Dan and Taxa in the Aurora Open are the two highest KDA players in the entire tournament. Normally, I don't really talk about statistics like that too much, but they have such standout stats of a 13.83 KDA and a 10.89 KDA. You have to just mention it because both of these junglers have been so pivotal to their team success in this Pro-Am tournament. And I think a lot of this series will come down to how they interact with their lanes and the win conditions.
And I think if that's going to be our focus, that's something that Dan has shown himself to be incredibly proficient at time and time again. The way that this guy moves around the jungle, plays around camp respawns, and just turns up where he's needed has been one of the reasons why he has been at this high level for such a long time.
Yeah, and, you know, Desk already mentioned his own tenure, probably the longest-standing NLC player in terms of how long he spent within the UK and NLC scene. Speaking of him, he's going to lose his Raptors to Taxi, who's found his way into those Raptors, playing around the pressure which Senkux has in mid lane. Nope, Roscu on the Silas. Silas is kind of known to be a matchup which doesn't do the best into Akali very early on. It really is post-level 6 where things get more funky. You get to trade those ultimates out. But in the early lanes, being able to trade through the lane, through the wave, rather, and the minions very, very effectively on the Akali. You normally expect the Silas to fall behind a little bit, and you can see the Taxa immediately snapping up that slight window of opportunity, making sure that he can take some camps away.
Oh, Dan here just hovering around the bot side as the wave is on JDXL's side of the lane. Actually thinking about a gank here.
Well, Mrozku's teleported back in. Is spotted on bot side of the map. Now, I wonder if Kiba is going to start roaming up here, because Dan is currently got camps up in his bot side. I wonder if Astralis, wonder if Dan is still taking his Gromp or something like that, but he's been in fog for a little while now. I think the timing is probably going to work out for him. You can see that they've paid the respect so far. Dan not going to find a window so far. So both junglers been angling around, looking for different opportunities, yet to find that first hammer blow.
Has been a little bit calmer in the early stages as Taxa is also going to turn up to the bot lane, just try and ensure that Chrisberg and Kiva can get this shoved through in there.
I hear it's wonderful this time of year. It's the prime holiday destination for traveling junglers.
Yeah, it's the south of France, south of Rift, kind of same thing, right?
Man, south of France is actually now an NLC region. Who knew? We were actually just taking a large swathe of the LFL with us. Well, that's news for all of you, news for us as well. But we're going to be vacating premises on this vacation.
I think it's a lie.
Funny how that works. We love to just spread misinformation here on the NLC.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. The early game has had a few of these little looks towards the lanes, but we've yet to have anything explosive yet. So we're kind of just looking at CS leads being built. Senkux, as we sort of alluded to earlier, having a lot of the pressure and having the lion's share of the gold in that mid lane. And Venza, with that big freeze, able to engineer a decent CS lead for himself.
Yeah, and I think actually this mid lane is starting to a little bit worrisome for JDXL now. It's falling behind the 10 CS mark. It's going up towards more 20. And at that point, well, top lane, that's becoming a bit problematic too.
Yeah, ultimates are being blurred by both sides. The flash away from the Fate Sealed will keep Cries alive. But I love to see this from Carlson, this young player coming in against Cries, who has been in the LEC, who has gone to all these big tournaments and played on this big stage. The young gun's still absolutely going for it.
And this guy's been a carry the whole year. Trouble talked about it on desk. It really was him playing without resources, which was the more pain point for Astralis' young top laner. But in this matchup, takes the melee versus melee. It's the world's counter. It's the Zeus counter. And he has a chance to push in the wave, control it, and allow his top side of the map to make a play off of his own laning lead.
Yeah, Dan being forced away. Now 3 members of Astralis converging towards this tower. Cries has just been able to clear out that wave. So the dive is going to be called off for the time being, but I love how proactive both these teams are being. JDXL still going to be walking forward. Carlson going for a small trade. Tax taking a load of damage, a double knock-up. Forces the flash out of the Viego. Yeah,
I feel a little bit antsy there as soon as Cries starts cycling through those queues. But this actually started, you can see from that trade and that top side from Yone, that's one half of it. But then also Senkux, the other solo laner as well, winning that arm wrestle in mid lane, allowing that path towards top side. So Astralis playing around strong top side, the CS advantages starting to manifest into stuff like the Herald, plates, and the ability to control vision on the top side of the map.
So this is really interesting from Tax. So I was looking back at some of the early jungle pathing from both of these teams through the knockout stages of this Aurora Open, and these early solo heralds are something that Dan actually loves to go towards. The 8-minute mark, runs over to that objective, tries to pick it up, but instead Tax is the one who's going to get Shelly's corpse.
Okay, so now they have that to make a power play somewhere. And if you are, again, going back to this whole identity of this draft, melees versus melees, pretty much across the whole map. You've got an Enchanted support, you've got a Graves, but then everyone else is getting really into the thick of it at very low range. You don't get to defend plays against stuff like Herald and large wave clear opportunities that easily. You can see, again, Chrisberg having to blow the ultimate. It's very hard to start clearing waves, and now you've got that Herald on the board. JDXL actually forcing Astralis' hand. I like what they're doing here, making sure that Taxa has to respond, so he doesn't have a prime immediate answer for that Herald on the map.
But fair play to Taxa, fair play to Astralis. It is a response. They recognize that there's a possibility of the play going down in the bot lane, and they move to counter it. That's kind of been the theme of this early game so far, is one team looks for a move, the other goes, we know that you're going to go for this, we'll answer appropriately, and you won't be able to make it happen.
And it does come back to, again, just leads in this game are probably going to stick. They're probably going to be quite difficult to overcome because it is very hard to, well, you're not exactly outranging opponents in this game, right? So if you start falling behind, you don't really get to play safe. You need to make a power play somewhere. Feels like a real dance of knives. Both these teams waiting just for that one opening. Could happen in mid lane, as we do have Morosky not having the Akali ultimate.
Yeah, Keeper's right over. Morosky actually forced back Senkux with a load of damage, pressuring out the young mid laner. Good support run play from Kiva, recognizing the possibility for a play. Taxa, with the Herald, maybe looking to place it down and grab some plates.
What's going to be the cost of this, though? You can see that Morosky suffering this mid lane, takes a heavy trade, no teleport to reset. Dan is not close enough to quite impact the lane. Might be around to stop Herald being pushed in. But on the bot side of the map, Venza set up a freeze, so the Samira has the opportunity to deny Lucian some waves. But if you freeze it on bot side and you support Scene on Vision, top lane's not exactly feeling too happy about that either. Astralis maybe looking to put that Herald towards this Yone, who's been doing so successfully in this early lane. But speaking of that, Yone just taking a heavy trade.
Yeah, and once again, that means that the play is going to be called off. Dan now adventuring into the bottom side of the rift. A level 6 Rel is basically just a huge dive door, and there goes the ultimate. Crisco being taken low as Venza dives under the tower. First blood for Dan, a second kill for the AD carry of JDXL.
Oh, the pressure builds, and it breaks through bot lane. Astralis do have a cross map. It's going into mid lane. Morozku taking a heavy trade and a number of plates going over to the Akali. So Senkux getting some gold of their own right. But JDXL strike first, and it's the Lucian Nami that fall down. Samira with a lead. That's kind of scary now for Astralis.
Yeah, and you're not really going towards the identity of what that Lucian Nami lane wants to do if you are falling down. Well, Senkux could have gone for a play there. He is hovering around in JDXL's jungle, just establishing a little bit of vision to try and spot out where Dan's pathing.
Yeah, Dan is not allowed his popcorn chicken in this game. That's going to be taken off the order. Raptors do not belong to you. Much like if you remember when you played against Lilia back in like season 10 after release.
Don't
Raptors
remind
just
me.
didn't exist for you at that point. It's the easiest camp to steal when you have mid lane prior. So Senkux controlling this mid lane matchup in a way that Astralis have done so well, particularly across summer. They were the mid lane control team for much of summer.
Oh, hello.
Not exactly bot lane to respond to here, though.
We're diving bot lane once more. Chrisberg still has the flash available that the CC chain is just too good. A second kill for Venza.
And it goes on to the Samira. So one of the first kills went onto that AD carry. Second one comes down in this play. It's another wave lost to tower. It's another plate likely going over to JDXL. And it's the Dragon as well. And it comes through FGG and Dan linking up. For me, this is a big evolution of what JDXL could do. They do have more of a connection between their players, and Morozku feeling himself too.
Perfectly executing onto Senkux, but the stolen ultimate not quite as potent. They are a duo that have been sort of very strong in the NLC for quite a while. Remember Venza and FGG on Dusty actually in spring, coming into summer on JDXL. They've had their slip-ups, but this is a bot lane that knows how to play aggressive, and they love to do so.
Yeah, and when they get a lead, they are so impressive to watch. FGG on his eponymous
no.
rally. He's going for it again.
Ooh, there's a lot of damage, but he turns around, he goes forward once more. The stun comes out, and Chrisberg is so incredibly low. He gets a kill back, but now Venza is in a damn hard place to fight his way out of. Taxa will take out the Samira, claim that shutdown.
Oh, it's a dive too far this time. FGG caught out, takes a lot of damage, looks for the turnaround, but Astralis pick up some very important kills. One of those kills goes on to Chrisberg. That is very much needed at this point in time. The other one going over to Taxa. 1-0-1 now on the Viego. It is a much needed breaking of the momentum which JDXL started to build up.
And, well, it feels like this could be a replay of literally any play in the bot lane, because JDXL have gone for this so many times. Credit to Astralis being able to turn this one around, but bot lane is bleeding so heavily right now for the team from Denmark.
And I think the thing which is surprising me the most is that actually Senkux hasn't been first to the play. He's now making a play in his own mid lane as many JDXL members go on to him, but this mid lane priority from this Akali hasn't really led to plays on the bot side of the map to even things out. They had some looks top lane, but when we saw multiple of these dives coming in from JDXL towards that 2v2, actually it was Morozku that had left the wave and got towards that bot lane first. Really think Senkux needs to find a way to impact this game after this point. He has a lot of the power in his hands. Need to see him, if you're a fan of Astralis, really start leveraging the lead he's built up.
Yeah, once you get to level 11 especially, the perfect execution at the rank 2 becomes incredibly difficult to deal with. As I thought maybe Morozku was going to get caught out there, but we talked a lot about the bot lane, and Venza is really accelerating there. Dan, also a beneficiary here on the Graves, going for the Umbral Glaive very early on to get a little bit of that Vision Dial and that early spike. Also got the Iron Spike Whip, so probably going to be seeing a Gore Drinker out of that Graves. First tower falling in the bot lane, all of that gold going on to Venza's back pocket.
And while this is happening as well, you know, we've talked about the mid lane lead, but one thing you typically see when you see this Yone and this topside focused draft, and you have the Herald early too, is that you're going to have this Aatrox hopefully shut out of the game. But Kryze is one of these players that will take an awkward situation and still end up playing it to the best of his ability. So he's ended up keeping very even in farm, maybe lost a couple of plates, but really not that much worse the way for it. So Astralis, though they're losing a lot through bot side, they still haven't managed to cross-map effectively to get the lead onto Carlson's Yone.
And that's one of the issues with the Yone as a champion. He does scale incredibly well, but you want to give him a little bit of help. You want to get him to that point, because
he won't be here for this play. His teammates will be jungle and support once again roaming to the play. Just making sure that this lead from the Akali that we're asking Astralis to play through isn't easy to do so. Multiple members currently in the lane when Senkux really has an angle to do anything, just nullifying what the Akali can do in these skirmishes.
And I love how Dan is playing this, Rose. We typically associate him with more enabling picks. As hold that thought, Cries is potentially caught out in the bot side jungle, trying to steal away some of that popcorn chicken, but he's not eating good tonight.
Well, gets a couple of all the same. Because again, this Aatrox has hit level 12 now at this point, multiple points in the E, starting to get some of that Omnivamp stacked up from that E, as well as alongside of the Q being maxed out. Has himself that Eclipse. It's very hard to burst out an Aatrox in this 1+ item spike, but while all this is happening, JDXL did a great job of nullifying some of their advantages, but Astralis, again, not being caught sleeping on this one, finding an opening, getting that Herald into mid lane, and blowing open that mid lane outer turret. Chrisberg has himself that 1-item spike alongside the Nami as well. Though they've been put behind the 1-item spike from particularly First Strike, Lucian Nami as well. You run at someone with Gale Force and that ultimate, someone has to get the heck out of dodge. That's now another power point for Astralis to potentially pick apart some of what JDXL want to do in this mid game.
And the thing is, JDXL don't really have a champion that I feel like can just face tank that full culling at this point. The Rel is a tank, but obviously you're on the support income, and those Ionian Boots of Lucidity don't make you particularly tanky. So if Chrisberg and Kiba can play with a little bit of that priority, play with a little bit of that aggression, which you can do now that that mid lane tower is gone, maybe you're freed up a little bit, but it's still JDXL who have come out of the early game with a not insignificant gold lead and are starting to pressurize around the Drake.
Everything can still go wrong, Venza!
Diving forward, and somehow Blade whirls the Nami ultimate. Bubble knocks up Cries and Chrisberg able to dash away, but it's JDXL who have the pressure. The culling being used in response, but it's just tickling now. Not landing those shots all importantly. Dodge away for the fate sealed as FGG dives into Astralis. A kill for Dan, a killing spree for himself as the Aatrox gets one as well. Resets start to come through for Astralis though, as it's a double for Senkux. Here comes Roscu turning up to the play, but it is a 3v3. FGG is dead, but the stolen Rel is making it happen. JDXL in the bottom side jungle take down Astralis, rip 4 off the map.
The culling has a dull edge, but JDXL are oh so sharp. It gets close. Taxa with reset, stealing the Samira, who's got a lot of gold at this point, made things very precarious for a hot minute in that fight. But I'm talking about how JDXL, things could still go wrong for them. It just about hold itself together for them.
Absolutely playing on a knife's edge, and Dan is going to be able to pick up the dragon as well, so you get the fight and you get the objectives after.
Yeah. And, you know, we were talking about how the Lucian Nami, big point in power, they try and use that, but again, it's got a bit of a dull edge to it. Doesn't really find the damage that they want to. FGG finds himself an angle, but before all this has started, the AD carry, Venza, taken low, restarts start coming through. Viego with resets, it's always going to be a threat. That makes things very, very dangerous on the back end of this fight for JDXL. And even though they came out with, as you were saying, a not insignificant lead from that early game, you can see what Astralis can do in the heat of the moment, but they're dying in the tower.
Oh no, Chrisberg for the 5th time this game is slain, and Boss Venza's only got 3 of them. He has been a part of all of that play. JDXL with this proactivity, continuing to make it happen, now pressuring towards the top side of the rift.
JDXL, again, this was a team that had to learn so much after their collapse in summer and their collapse at EU Masters as well. This series, for me, from the outside looking in, we were thinking about how important this is for them to at least kind of put a mark of approval and say, you know what, we have actually learned. We have built on something. Going into this replay, see what they've learned about how to deal with these pesky AD carries. Venza, FGG, wonderful Blade Wall. Even better flash from Venza. Dodges out on everything which could threaten, gets the kill.
I mean, Akali ult is perfect execution, but what you saw just there was perfect execution from Venza. Dodging away from everything, flashing over that tidal wave and picking up another kill onto Chrisberg. JDXL, they want this mid lane tower. It is the last outer remaining. They may just go for the dive instead. FGG is going to be stunned on the tower. Taxa going forward, but the Viego is exploded. The culling kills the Rel, but Venza isn't going to stop. Diving in 1v3 and somehow takes out Chrisberg. It is a double kill for the Lucian and Senkux, thinking about going back in, but wisely backs away. JDXL, they will never not go for those dives.
And what JDXL have done in the last minute there is they took control of the side lanes, pushed them in, and then roamed mid. Even though you've got this mid lane tower still standing, it's so hard to defend.
It's happening again. JDXL going for the dive. Cries, bit of a sticky situation, tanking the tower, but still gets the kill. A rampage for himself as Carlson will slay him down. Senkux actually grabbing the kill before the Yone falls off the rift. Such a bloody game, Nymera and Senkux. He is playing with fire.
Flip. Yeah, and it is such a bloody game. Again, following back to the very start of this draft, it is melee versus melee, pretty much across the board. Let's be honest, Graves is solo range. You can pretty much make him honorary melee as well. As soon as these fights start, they are very hard to disengage from. You can't really stop someone from fighting you if they really want to. And JDXL have been pulling the trigger, which is why it's so important that they're keeping up the pace of this game. They're trying to leverage their advantage. And they're doing it through actually good setup too. That's one of the missing steps that they had a little bit through, again, the back half of summer. They didn't necessarily have the setup for the plays that they were making, particularly when they fell behind. But in this game, they have a lead, they're winning side lanes, and then they're committing to fights. This has been, actually, a fairly comprehensive performance from JDXL.
And it's great to see as we crest the 20-minute mark, and these fights are going to start precipitating into things a little bit more impactful for the state of the game, right? We're going to be looking at Drake, not the soul, but the soul point in a minute and a half. Baron is on the board as well. So if Astralis get wiped 4 for 1 like they did in that bot side play again, it could be disastrous for them. Double FGG once again diving forward on the rail, but there isn't really the support to back him up. Now in that dismounted form is going to be taken out, so that's a kill for an Astralis. How much can they get off it though?
I don't know if they can get that much. They've still lost a lot of this vision control, and they've used that culling, and of course Tax's ultimate too, which is very important for Viego to be able to actually try and get out of the real mire in the no man's land of these low-range team fights. But JDXL overextend that bloodthirsty instinct, finally getting punished a little bit. It got close before, but this one's actually a clean win for Astralis, one of the few they've had this game. But they'll absolutely take it, because as much as we are singing a lot of JDXL's praises in this game is by no means done. Very much. You can just lose your 4-kill Aatrox at the start of a fight. Viego gets to take their body. Same kind of thing with the Silas or the Samira. Everyone has to be on really high alert for JDXL. You lose that first kill and everything can go wrong, as much as it has been in the positive so far. So JDXL gonna go back towards their map setup, pushing in these side lanes like they were doing before, and seeing what they can do with that laning prio afterwards.
30 seconds until the Drake spawns. Mrozq on the top side of it, but has access to the teleport should he need to join his team. And with Taxa going into the top side, it feels like Astralis are just giving this one up. And maybe you feel like you can't fight JDXL at this stage, but you're giving over objectives, you're giving over pressure, and that's not a good thing.
This is Mrozq. Mrozq loves his personal space. This is Taxa. Taxa also loves Mrozq's personal space. He goes right up into that top side, doesn't care about JDXL and whether you can fight them or not. This Viego does have one of the only surefire disengage ways to get out of fights in this game with that ultimate. Takes the portal over to the top side of the map, but JDXL now going to return to that scene, try and get some of that vision back in their own control. And Dan, as you were saying, earlier in this game, loves to take soul objectives, typically around that Herald, but this time it is going to be a dragon on the Hex Tech Soul. Ignore that icon in the top right-hand corner. Left-hand corner? I know my direction. It's going to be Hex Tech Soul point for JDXL.
I thought you got a handle on that by now, honestly, Nymera.
It's been a trying year, you know. My life is now League of Legends. Anything which is actually common League knowledge. Come back to me about that one.
I suppose we won't call it left and right, we'll call it blue side, red side. There's a fight happening and Dan's dead. That's a shutdown for Taxa. No small feat there, and this is what we were talking about. Astralis in the game versus Rate, in that series versus Rate, they were so excellent at punishing enemy oversteps, as Kiba may have overstepped here, as Cries will chase him down with the World Ender, and with Venza and FGG at his back, the Nami not long for the world.
Okay, so a couple of micro mistakes on both sides being adequately punished by both sides. JDXL, we're talking about how they were pushing in side lanes, collapsing on players after that point. Well, the problem with that is that you have a lot of people split across the map. Astralis finds someone out of position, out of line, and quickly dots the I's and crosses the T's on their death certificate. But just afterwards, it's Kiba. This Nami has no flash, no hope. And Taxa, I thought he saw some people in that brush. Guess he didn't, but he doesn't.
He just
Doesn't need
walks
to
away.
see him, it turns out.
Fair enough, the Scuttle Crab speed can get him out of there. Actually, Astralis may look for a re-engage. Senkux has teleported into this one. Venza and FGG are a little bit isolated as Chrisberg with a lot of damage down to the Samira already, but Taxa forced to flash out of that fight. Senkux comes back forward, but the Immortal Shield Bow buying a little bit of time for Venza. A shutdown for the Akali around the Baron Pit, but here comes the rest of XL. They're looking to make this happen, but Roscu already dead. Astralis with 2 clean kills in the fight.
And this is why we're talking about it not being a done job. JDXL on the ropes.
Ooh, Cries forced to flash away the Spectral Maul charged up by Taxa, but it does not connect. The top laner gets out with his life.
Senkux finally finding these windows of opportunities to start impacting this game. Couldn't quite do it earlier on. It really was JDXL controlling the early game. The bot lane dives, but Senkux teleports in, really holds Venza to account once again. This Samira playing around these very low HP engages, trying to get that ultimate off, trying to sustain through with the shield bow, but this time it was Senkux who could get the better of them. You can see that Graves not at the play, Aatrox not at the play, teleports in, but it is Senkux who's done the damage already by this point, and Senkux just about gets the damage calculation done, and that's where the fight turns around.
Yeah, and let's not discount the gold being injected into the Kali. It's incredibly efficient.
That's
and
a
Roscu
fair amount of damage.
Underestimating what he could do on the backside, but now Astralis well and truly back into the game. It's not okay. Maybe they can look for some of these picks. They are doing it, and we've got 3 items now on Chrisberg, 3 items on Senkux, and Taxa is rapidly going to be approaching that point with the chain vest in his back and that stopwatch looking towards the Guardian Angel. Astralis are a lot closer to parity than maybe the gold may suggest.
Exactly. It really doesn't take much for one of these fights to go the other way. It's going to be the culling pulled out again, Blade Whirl down, and of course that's a very important ability to take away. It means you can't block the tidal wave. It means you can't block something like a Shuriken Flip or the likes too. So culling pulled out, but all that does this time is secure some mid lane priority.
And I think that mid lane priority is the key thing. This feels like the first time that Astralis have really been able to push back JDXL as a group. They've really been able to force them away. And with a minute and a half until that Hex-Strike Soul, I think it's so important for Astralis to have this priority around the mid side and around the bot side, because if you give that over, all of the good plays that you're making can kind of go to naught.
Yeah, and you know, JDXL have actually had pretty clean macro up until this point. You know, they made a couple of mistakes, but every small mistake looks huge in this game. Again, it's so easy to punish from both sides. But JDXL, they controlled side lanes, they controlled that mid lane afterwards. This time, they're making a bit of a, I'm not going to say desperation, but they're forcing Astralis away from that mid lane, forcing them away from their point of power around this Lucian Nami, and forcing them to commit into the dark.
Is Taxa going to get in here in time? Pops the blast pump, but no, that's just a free Baron for JDXL, and they're going to be able to get out of it. Carlson trades it for a bot lane tower, but Astralis honestly caught napping there.
Again, I really appreciate what JDXL did in terms of the awareness of what's happening in this game. Astralis, they achieved that mid lane priority. They want to play around that mid lane. JDXL take the fight away from it. Astralis, they'd found their point of power. They managed to find a couple of these fights, but it's so difficult for them to face check into what JDXL are doing. Of course, it's difficult for Roscu to do the same.
He's fine. For the time being.
Just about. But again, it is coming down to these moments of awareness, understanding what the win conditions are in the game, and that's something which JDXL, and particularly Dan, as we were saying in the early game at least, have been very proficient at. Now, they're starting to do that again into this mid game, get themselves that Baron at a point where it felt like things were getting a little bit risky for them, collapsing on this bot side, as Carlson TPing in to form the bulwark.
Attempting to save Astralis in the bottom side of the rift. FGG going forward, but not really connecting on too many with people with the ultimate. Taxa already taken incredibly low, and the Lucian's blown up as well. 2 kills in the blink of an eye for JDXL. A third as Kiba attempts to escape. And Senkux and Carlson, the solo laners, now being chased down. JDXL, they don't care about that Drake for the time being. They want this push.
And every time you lose a fight against a Baron buff, it doubles down on the losses you have. You don't have any wave clear at this point. You're a very low range composition. It affects the fights. It affects how you can kill minions. This is a power push from JDXL. High health bars, high kill threat.
Senkux popping into the shroud, keeps himself alive. Mosque finding Carlson, but the fate sealed, not enough to make it work for Astralis. 2 kills, a double for Venza as they continue to push down this bot lane inhib. Kreis has teleport available. JDXL, they could just try and end this.
I don't think they're going to with Chrisberg and Kiba coming up, not deciding to take that risk, but It is really feeling like that was the fight which will seal out this game. They're looking for a pick. Can they find something onto Chrisberg?
Flash available for the Lucian. Dash isn't away. Keeps himself alive, but lacking those mobility spills in these later game team fights is absolutely disastrous. Taxa falling low to Cries with the World Ender. Will back away himself. JDXL. Baron's going to be falling off in a little bit, but with that Hextech Soul at their back, they are in a clear advantage.
And you know what? For a first game in a best-of-5 between these two teams, these two Div 1 rivals, we hadn't seen this matchup in best-of-5s through the entire year. This is a pretty good way to start it off. It's a mechanical showcase. Wins being traded across the board. It has been JDXL clawing themselves into this dominant position, but it wasn't without these plays from Astralis holding to them account every so often as well. Both these teams coming into this series with a fair amount to show for themselves.
Yeah, something to prove as well. Now the focus is, well, going to be in the bottom lane from Broscu, trying to jump on top of Senkux, who dashes away. Rest of Astralis are here to back up their mid laner, and the Silas is going to be taken out. You have to feel, pops into the Zonyas, and will go down in the end. JDXL, though, they are getting towers, they are getting objectives on the other parts of the map.
Yeah, so there's going to be a turret falling on the top side. Baron buff has now fallen off, so JDXL can't superpower their minions that way. Lots of us being pulled onto Cries.
World Ender used, FGG trying to support his top laner as Dan and Venza are coming from inside the base. They're inside the house, and Venza is on a rampage. A double kill for the Samira as he takes out Taxa. A triple kill for the Samira as he takes out Kiba. A quadra kill. Let's go. Venza, pentakill time. But Senkux escapes onto the safety of his fountain.
Surely they've got to dive.
JDXL, come on, go for the dive. I've already cast one Venza pentakill in my time. I want to cast a second in this game, and it looks like he will get it. No! Senkux turns it around, but JDXL, they won't care about that too much. The Akali diving forward, making a desperation trade, attempting to save this game one for Astralis, but in a 1v2 it sucks, and with the teleport coming out from Roscu, a 1v3 is even worse. It was a banger, Nightmare, but JDXL are the ones who come out victorious in game one.
What an absolute bloodbath.